I have an important question. Do you like cats? Do you really like cats? Because if you do, I got a commander for you. She's going to make you lots of cats. And a lot of people have been asking me to make monocolor commanders, so I figured this would be a perfect one to whip up and be ready for you guys. So this is Jolrael, the Mwanvali Recluse. She's a 2-mana commander, so she comes out really quick. Anytime you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 green cat creature token, and you can pay 6 to make all your creatures get base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So she has a built-in Craterhoof effect functionally for our cards. She also creates all the tokens we could want, and she comes out on turn 2. There's really nothing not to love about Jolrael. She is a very straightforward build-around commander, and I think you're going to really, really enjoy her. She makes a ton of cat tokens, and you can just annihilate people with a ton of cat tokens. So, what are we doing with the deck? We've, of course, got a ramp section to get through, beginning with Beneath the Sands. Search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, or pay 2 to cycle it to give us our second draw during the turn, which will, of course, trigger our ability. Unstable Obelisk, a basic ramp spell that can also blow up cards later in the game. Command Sphere, a basic ramp spell that can draw a card for us to trigger our commander's ability. Explore lets us draw a card, triggering our commander's ability and letting us play an additional card land during our turn. Search for Tomorrow grabs, well, a forest onto the battlefield, puts it into play untapped. We can also play it on turn 1 with its suspendability. Mind Stone can be sacked to draw a card and also counts as a ramp spell. Hedron Archive is another ramp spell that can be sacked to draw 2 cards. So we can do this on an opponent's turn to spawn a cat on their turn. Dreamstone Hedron can be sacked to draw 3 cards, and it can tap for 3. Of course, this can be done on an opponent's turn to guarantee that we get our tokens on more turns than just ours. Then we have Llanowar Visionary. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and you can tap it to add a green mana. Then we have Rampant Growth. Search your library for a basic land card, put that in the card of the battlefield tapped. And then we have Wilderness Reclamation at the beginning of your end step. Untap all lands you control. So all of our cards that are giving us draw on our opponent's turn, cycling on our opponent's turn, all that. This is a way to guarantee that we have access to those cards after our turn is done, and you'll see why that's important when we get to the draw section. But before we get to that, let's talk about the removal section of the deck. 14 cards deep, so just a really strong amount of removal, beginning with Slice and Twain, because it blows up an artifact or enchantment and then draws us a card, triggering our commander's ability. Meteor Golem, of course, we are a monocolored deck, so we are limited in the types of cards we can remove, and Meteor Golem lets us avoid all of those problems. Also, he's, in a green deck right now, so we have the mana to pay for him. Root Out can blow up an artifact or enchantment, and then it gives us a clue token, which our commander can then sacrifice to let us draw more cards. Return to Nature, blow up an artifact, blow up an enchantment, or get rid of a card in a person's graveyard at instant speed. Just always gotta have ways to make sure the Reanimator player is not going to ruin your day. Rexage, ETBs, blows up an artifact or enchantment. Cankerbloom, we can sack it to blow up an artifact or enchantment or proliferate. Filgree Fracture, blow up an artifact or enchantment, but if it's blue or black, draw a card, triggering our commander's ability. Acidic Slime blows up any non-land permanent that is not a creature, functionally. It can't blow up a planeswalker, though. That kind of sucks. Woodfall Primus, ETBs, blows up a non-creature permanent, and then it has Persist, so you can do that ability more than once. Terrastodon blows up 3 non-creature permanents, but also turns them into 3/3 green elephants. Transmogrant Wand comes into play with 3 1/1 count, or 3 charge counters, and we can remove a charge counter to turn a creature into a 2/4 Ox by blowing it up and replacing it with a token. King Kenny's Transformation turns any creature into an elk and draws us a card, triggering our commander's ability. Rending Vines blows up an artifact or enchantment if its converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of cards in our hand, and then it draws us a card. Then we have Outland Liberator, a creature that lets us sack it to blow up an artifact or enchantment, and it introduces the Daybound, Nightbound mechanic into the game, so all of our opponents will promptly want to shun us and never let us play a game of Commander with them again, which is fine sometimes. Somebody that might be playing Infect with a certain $15 deck that I was forced to build due to public opinion But anywho, next we have the very important section of the deck, the Lords and ETB synergy. So this deck is going to be spawning a ton of cats, so Season of Growth is here to guarantee that we scry one every time we do, and if we happen to cast a spell that targets a creature we control at all, we get to draw a card off that, so Season of Growth is doing double duty for us. Gaia's Anthem gives all of our creatures +1/+1, and then Hall of Triumph, we choose a color, and creatures of the chosen color get +1/+1. So this is guaranteeing that all of our creatures are always going to be bigger than the 2/2 than they normally are. Now we need to move into the biggest section of the deck by far, the 24 card strong draw engine, because we want to trigger our commander lots and lots. Beginning with Jellum Tome, we can pay 2 to draw a card, then discard a card. We want to do this in combination with other tomes on our opponent's turns, so that we are generating a cat on our turn and on each of their turns. Jorga Visionary, ETBs to draw a card. Elvish Visionary, ETBs to draw a card. Urza's Tome, pay 3, draw a card, then discard a card unless you exile a historic card from your graveyard. So a spent Mind Stone, a spent Command Sphere, but it doesn't really matter too much. We can discard cards, it doesn't hurt us. We just want to be able to use this and other tomes on other people's turns. Like MSC Tome, pay 5, draw 2 cards, and discard a card. Just automatically triggers our commander on somebody else's turn. Skyscanner, ETBs, and draws us a card. Lore Seeker Stone, draw 3 cards, and it costs 1 more for every card in your hand. It normally costs 3. So this is a late game when we are spent ability that lets us keep spawning tokens. Master Admirer draws us a card when it comes onto the battlefield, and if we cast any creature spells, we can go ahead and get it back to our hand from the graveyard by paying 2. Brainstone can sack itself to activate the Brainstorm ability, which of course draws more than 2 cards, triggering our commander. Owlbear Shepherd at the beginning of your end step, if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater, which they will because we're spawning a lot of cats, draw a card. Generous Stray, ETBs, and draws a card. Overwhelming Instinct, whenever a creature, whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you get to draw a card, triggering our commander. Collective Unconscious, draw a card for every creature you control. We will have a lot of them. Primordial Sage, when you cast a creature spell, draw a card. We have 21 creatures, the likelihood is high. Wall of Blossoms, when it ETBs, draw a card, triggering our commander. Keeper of Fables, if a non-human creature deals damage to a player, draw a card. Harmonize, draw 3 cards. Primitive Etching, reveal the first card you draw each turn. If that card is a creature card, you may draw a card. And Rowan, reveal the first card you draw each turn. If you find a basic land, then you may draw a card. Symbiotic Development lets us skip our draw step, but then we can tap 2 untapped creatures we control to draw a card. Also, remember, because of the way Primitive Etchings and Rowan work, if we have both of them on the battlefield, then they are allowing us to have cross coverage. As long as we are touching a creature or we are touching a basic land, then we are going to be able to get all kinds of draw power with these, triggering our commander. Then we have Collector's Vault. We can pay 2 to draw a card, then discard a card and create a treasure token. That can happen on our opponent's turn, so more ways to trigger that effect on other people's turns. Endless Atlas lets us pay 2 and draw a card, only if we have 3 or more lands that have the same name, which is easy because we are playing mono green. 3 forests is not hard to get. Shamanic Revelation, draw a card for every creature you control, or if you've got creatures with power 4 or greater, gain 4 life for each of those as well. And then we have Eye of Vecna. ETBs, draws a card, you lose 2 life, and at the beginning of your upkeep you may pay 2, and if you do, draw a card and lose 2 life. A recurable way to draw cards, triggering our commander over and over and over again, because our only goal is to get a bunch of cats on the board and then turn them sideways at somebody. But let's say that we lose some stuff in the process. We have 2 recursion cards here, a Regrowth and a Timeless Witness. They both get a any card from our graveyard to our hand, but Timeless Witness can recur itself with Eternalize to allow you to get a card twice. Both of these cards are incredibly good in just about any deck you can fit them in, and I like them a lot. Now we have the win con section. This is the, hey, was spawning 2 cats every turn cycle, or 3 cats or 4 cats every turn cycle not enough? Let's turn them into actual damaging threats. Beginning with Overwhelming Encounter. Roll a d20. If we get 1 through 9, all our creatures get 2/2. That's fine. But if we get 10 through 19, it's 2/1/1 counters. But if we roll a natural 20, it's 4/1/1 counters. Realistically, this is almost always going to be just all our creatures get 2/2, and we get to turn them sideways at somebody. Vivian Stampede gives all of our creatures melee, trample, and vigilance, which means that for every single opponent that is attacked, our creatures are generating an extra 1/1 on themselves. And at the beginning of our next main phase, draw a card for every player who has dealt combat damage this turn, which guarantees that as soon as our combat phase is over, we will draw a ton of extra cards. Overrun. Creatures you control get 3/3 and gain trample until end of turn. End raise. Forerunners. All our creatures gain 2/2 vigilance and trample until end of turn. You look upon the Tarask. This card does double duty. You can use Run and Hide to prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and creatures you control this turn, letting you dodge things like Blasphemous Act, or target creature you control gets +5/+5 and gains Indestructible, and all creatures that your opponent has to block that creature. So you can use this as a kill spell, you can use this as a dodge Blasphemous Act or Comet Storm spell, or you can use this as a way to kill a single player by making everybody throw all their creatures to block a single taunting cat, and then all your other creatures are free to get their damage in on the opponent's face. Sky Shaper, we can sacrifice it to give all of our cats flying until end of turn, which can let us just win the game with flyers. Then we have Psychosis Crawler. Power and toughness equal to the number of cards in our hand, and whenever we draw a card, each opponent will lose 1 life. So if we are not in the position to win with combat damage, Psychosis Crawler will be dealing lots of damage throughout the game because our deck has such a thick draw package. But the draw package doesn't stop there. We get to move on to the lands, and in the land section, we have a lot of ways to draw too. We have 7 of them, in fact. Tranquil Thicket can cycle itself to draw a card. Slippery Crouse can cycle itself to draw a card. Hunter Maze and Desert of the Indomitable can both cycle themselves to draw cards when we are late in the game and we don't need more lands. Cryptic Cave can sacrifice itself to draw a card if you have 5 or more lands. Then we have Arch of Orza. We can pay 5 and draw a card if we have the City's Blessing, which is really easy to do. That just means we need to have 10 permanents on the board. Then Gaia Reach Sanitarium. We can pay 2 to make each player draw a card and then discard a card. We also have a single fetching land in Myriad Landscape because it can ramp us, and then 28 forests rounding off the entire deck. This is probably the most simple and straightforward deck I have ever built on this channel. You are literally just spawning a ton of cats and trying to turn them sideways. But let's say that you need a way to kill multiple things on the board. Other people are getting really out of control. Then you have 2 board wipes. Oblivion Stone, you can play it for 3, put a fate counter on a permanent with 4, and then if you pay 5 and tap it, blow it up, blow up every non-land permanent that does not have a fate counter on it. Usually we're just going to go ahead and pay 8 to play this card, immediately sack it, blow up everything immediately, and then pass the turn, knowing that we have the draw power to rebuild. Then we have Ezre's Predation. We go ahead and make a ton of green Phyrexian Beast creature tokens, and then we make them fight every single creature that an opponent controls. This is both board wipe and win con. In the event our commander is not spawning enough tokens, this will spawn plenty of tokens for us. So this is the backup plan next to the Psychosis Crawler. But like I said, this is the most straightforward deck I have probably ever built. A 2-mana commander that comes out super quick, that spawns cats really quick, has a win con built into it, allows you to play a deck that is almost all draw spells so that you can continuously get that effect. This is a phenomenally simple and straightforward deck. But what if you were to do some upgrades to it? Well, starting with the ramp section, of course, moving into things like Nature's Lore and 3 Visits is an obvious no-brainer. Also, adding in things like Seedborn Muse instead of just Wilderness Reclamation so that we have multiple untaps on every person's turn would help us out a ton as well. Making sure that our recursion package also gets an EWIT would help. Our removal package probably wouldn't change all that much as we are running most of the premier removal that Mono Green has, but we would be able to make room for a Beast Within, probably removing something like the Transmogrifying Wand or, you know, the Filigree Fracture. Any of these more narrow cards could be swapped out for a Beast Within in this deck. As for the win cons, you could upgrade a couple of the cards. You could move the Look Upon the Tarrasque into a basic taunt card that is going to be a little less mana. You can also trade out some of these overrun effects for an Overwhelming Stampede specifically, or good old Craterhoof Behemoth if you really want to go that route. Those are all options you have. Also, you can add an Akroma's Memorial to this deck instead of the Sky Shaper. Yes, it's going to cost more mana, but if you are moving away from the budget of the deck, then that is a certain obvious option that you have access to. You could also add a few more Anthems to the deck if you choose, but I think focusing on the overrun effects does more good here than anything else. The draw package, you would probably just change out some of the tomes for some of the more mana efficient ones. Maybe add in Watzalanti the Door, just more ways to go ahead and trigger draws for as close to free as possible on other people's turns, and that would certainly give you a good draw package, moving things like Eye of Vecna away from the deck, instead swapping in more tomes that can happen on other people's turns so that you have more options for draw. And speaking of draw lands, you would probably add a Makokoro here on top of the Gaia Reach Sanitarium, so you've got more repeatable draw that you can use on your field. I don't know if you would really add any other thing in the land section aside from that, because you're a mono green deck. You don't really have to do that. You could add in a command tower for the memes, just so you can laugh and say you have a command tower in a mono green deck, but I don't know if you would really ever do that as a sane person. But as always, everybody, thank you for watching. This was Jolreal Monvali Recluse, a deck that I've had built for a while, and I've just really not had the time to record the video for. It's a very simple deck, very straightforward, and I hope you guys enjoy it. The deck is just... you're going to have a lot of fun drawing cards, and if you don't like drawing cards, you're not playing Magic the Gathering. Also, for those who want to support my channel, there is, of course, a playmat available in the description below, and if you get a copy of that, then go ahead and take a picture of yourself with it and show me in my Discord, which you also can get to through the description of each video. But with that said, thank you all for watching. I am on the wrong screen. I am very much on the wrong screen. Let's go to the right screen. Thank you all for watching. I know it's a shorter video than usual, but let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let me know what upgrades you would do, and if you've played this deck before as well, then I'd love to hear your stories with it. As always, everybody, thank you for watching, and insert end of video tagline here.
Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.